Hey there, all you retail masterminds. Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going hyper-specific, laser-focused on something that might be a blind spot for a lot of seasoned retail execs.
It's something I find incredibly interesting.
Right. It has to do with the pandemic's impact, but not in the way you might think. We're not talking about masks and social distancing. We're talking about how the pandemic fundamentally changed the retail landscape for a whole generation of young associates, those who are, say, 18 to 24 today.
That's the generation that essentially missed out on the traditional in-person retail experience as customers during their formative years.
Exactly. And the article we're diving into today, Bridging the Gap, how the pandemic shaped the retail expectations of today's young associates. From Multimedia Plus, a company specializing in retail training, really nails this point. It makes you wonder, how does that lack of normal retail experience shape their expectations now that they're the ones on the sales floor?
It's almost like they were dropped into a completely different world of retail.
Right. Think about it. When we were coming up, physical retail was just retail. It was the norm. But for these young associates, their first taste of retail was lockdowns, curbside pickup, and apps doing all the heavy lifting.
So their frame of reference is entirely different. To really understand this, we need to zoom in on who we're talking about. We're looking at the generation who were roughly 13 to 19 when the pandemic hit in 2019.
That's a really specific age, and for a good reason, right?
Exactly. Those teenage years are when you're forming your ideas about the world, about what's normal. Imagine growing up thinking self-checkout was just how things are.
Or expecting every store to have a seamless online ordering system. It's like their baseline for retail is already light years ahead of what we grew up with.
And it goes beyond just those basic functions. This is a generation that's used to AI chatbots, personalized recommendations popping up on their screens. They've never had to wait in line to ask a salesperson for help finding something.
Which means their expectations for speed efficiency and honestly just plain tech savviness are incredibly high.
And the article highlights something that might seem counterintuitive at first. This generation, despite being incredibly tech-savvy, actually might need more training on face-to-face interaction.
Wait, really? It seems like all they do is interact online. Explain that one to me.
Well, think about it. If most of your interactions have been through screens, you might not have had as much practice with reading nonverbal cues or handling tricky situations in person.
Right, like dealing with a frustrated customer face-to-face is a whole different ballgame than responding to an angry email.
Exactly. And the article emphasizes that we can't just assume they'll pick these skills up on the job. We're talking about essential skills for building rapport, de-escalating conflicts, really connecting with customers on a human level.
So how do we bridge that gap? What's the article's take on that?
It emphasizes the importance of targeted training. Things like role-playing, where they can practice handling different customer scenarios, and mentorship programs where they can learn from more experienced associates.
It's like they're coming in with this amazing digital toolbox, but they need help mastering the most powerful tool of all, genuine human connection.
Precisely. And that's a skill that's more valuable than ever in today's retail landscape.
Okay, so we've talked about tech expectations and this interesting soft skills paradox. Anything else about this pandemic generation of associates that we should know?
Yes, actually. The article also highlights how this generation places a high value on health and wellness. It makes sense given that they entered the workforce during a global pandemic.
That's a really good point. It's not just about physical safety either, right?
Right. They're also concerned about mental well-being and work-life balance. And honestly, who can blame them? They've seen firsthand how fragile things can be and how burnout can impact their lives.
So it's not just about offering competitive wages or the latest tech gadgets. Companies also need to cultivate a supportive and healthy work environment. This is about meeting their needs as human beings.
Exactly. And if we think about how that ties into training, we can use it as a tool to not only teach them skills, but also instill a sense of belonging and purpose.
That's a really interesting point. So how does Multimedia Plus suggest we rethink training to address all of these unique needs and expectations?
Well, that's what we'll delve into next. The article outlines some really interesting strategies for creating a training program that truly resonates with this new generation of retail associates.
Okay, so we're going beyond just the what and the why. We're going to get into the how. Let's dive in.
The article really breaks down these training strategies into a few key areas, like where we can make the biggest impact.
Okay, I'm all ears. Let's hear what they recommend.
The first area they focus on is foundational retail knowledge. You and I probably absorbed a lot of this just by being customers ourselves, like watching how transactions work, maybe having a part-time retail job in high school.
Oh, absolutely. It was almost like osmosis. You just pick things up along the way.
Yeah.
But for this generation, that baseline is missing.
Exactly. They haven't had years of browsing aisles, interacting with salespeople, getting that intuitive sense of how a store operates.
It's like they missed out on Retail 101.
Yes. And that's where training needs to step in. It's not about assuming they know the basics of customer service, inventory management, or even something as simple as processing a return.
We need to build that foundation from the ground up.
Precisely. Now, the second area the article highlights is technology integration. And here's the thing. This generation might be tech savvy, but they're used to consumer tech, not the specialized systems retailers use.
So it's like they're fluent in smartphone, but they need to learn the language of retail software.
Exactly. Training needs to be very specific about how to use your POS systems, inventory management software, all the tools that make a retail operation run smoothly. And it can't be a one-time thing. Technology changes so quickly, so continuous training is essential.
We've got to give them the software updates as they're happening.
I like that analogy. It's like they're entering retail during a major system upgrade. The third area, and we've touched on this already, is soft skills and customer interaction. The article really drives home the point that we can't just assume they'll figure this out on the fly. Hands-on training is critical.
So things like role-playing, where they can practice handling different customer scenarios and get feedback in a safe environment.
Exactly. And mentorship programs can be incredibly valuable. They can shadow more seasoned associates and see those soft skills in action. It's about bridging that gap between their digital communication style and the nuances of interacting with a customer in person.
It's about giving them the tools to translate their digital fluency into real-world customer service skills.
Now, the fourth area the article emphasizes is the importance of highlighting the retail mission and building a sense of customer connection.
Right. This is where we go beyond just the tasks and the skills. It's about giving them a sense of purpose.
Exactly. We need to help them understand the why behind their work. How does their individual role contribute to the bigger picture of creating a positive experience for customers?
It's about connecting the dots between what they do every day and the impact it has on a customer's interaction with the brand.
And that can be incredibly motivating when you understand that you're not just ringing up transactions, that you're actually shaping someone's day, their perception of the company. It makes a difference.
And that leads us to the final point the article makes, right? It's this idea of creating a culture of continuous learning.
Yes. This generation doesn't see learning as a one-and-done event. They expect regular updates, new skills refreshers to keep them at the top of their game. It needs to be ongoing.
It's not just about delivering the information. It's about fostering an environment where learning is encouraged and integrated into the flow of work.
Think micro-learning modules, interactive quizzes, quick training check-ins, ways to keep the information fresh and engaging.
Constantly delivering new content and updates to keep them engaged and learning.
You've got it. And that plays to this generation's comfort with digital platforms. They're used to getting information in bite-sized pieces, personalized content, gamified learning. We can use those elements to keep them motivated and invested in their own development.
So it sounds like Multimedia Plus is advocating for a pretty significant shift in how we approach training. It's not just about filling in knowledge gaps. It's about understanding this generation's unique experiences and tailoring our training to their learning styles, values, and expectations.
And the article argues that the companies who do this won't just survive, they'll thrive.
Because they'll be able to tap into this generation's incredible strengths, their tech fluency, their adaptability, their fresh perspective on what retail can be. It's about, as the article says, bridging the gap. It's not about criticizing younger workers. It's about understanding where they're coming from and meeting them where they are.
And I think that's a powerful message for all of us in retail. This generation represents an incredible opportunity to evolve, to innovate, to create a retail landscape that's even more dynamic and customer-centric than ever before.
It's about seeing this generation not as a problem to be solved, but as a chance to build something better. And that brings us back to the listener, to you. We've unpacked a lot of information. What stood out to you in this deep dive? Have you seen these trends playing out in your own stores?
What challenges are you facing and what solutions have you found?
And what we've been discussing today, this pandemic generation of associates, they're at the forefront of this change. They're the ones who are going to shape the future of retail.
Absolutely. And the companies that recognize this, the ones that are willing to adapt and invest in developing this generation, they're the ones who are going to come out on top.
Because they'll be the ones who can truly harness the potential of this generation. Their comfort with technology, their desire for purpose-driven work, their fresh perspective.
And let's not forget their adaptability. They've already had to navigate a world of constant change and disruption. That's a valuable skill set in any industry.
Absolutely. They're almost like a built-in focus group for what the next generation of customers wants.
Yeah.
And if we can tap into that, the possibilities are endless.
It's all about shifting our mindset. Instead of viewing training as a cost, we need to see it as an investment in our people, in our future.
I love that. So to all of you retail leaders out there, embrace this change. Invest in your teams. Create a culture of learning and growth. Don't just try to survive this new era of retail. Thrive in it.
And remember, understanding is the key. Bridge the gap between generations, between expectations and reality. And watch as your business and the entire retail landscape transforms for the better.
This has been a truly insightful deep dive, and I hope you, our listener, walk away with a fresh perspective and maybe even a few action items for your own retail operations. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.